Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing The Hindu and Indian Express for the date 18th of November 2020. Now for your convenience, I have added timestamps in the description, so if you want to skip to a particular news, please use those timestamps. And free PDF for selected topics are available on the Telegram channel, the link to which is in the description. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. Also, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. So without wasting your time, let's get started. So starting with the Hindu, this one. So this is basically about the coverage of Tablighi Jamaat and the whole Corona super spreader thing. So this is about fake news, and the Supreme Court asked the government of India what mechanism or explicit mechanism does it have to check fake news. And if it does not have that mechanism, then the court said that it would come out with such a mechanism and the job would go to an outside agency. This is all that is to this one. Then page 6 editorial. This one, now what Biden will do, we'll get to know when he takes his rightful seat. Then shot in the arm, this is about vaccines we've been discussing, so nothing new, they're just giving their own gyan. Then fragile ceasefire, this is about Armenia, Azerbaijan. We've been discussing about this for so long, so no need for us to discuss here, nothing new. Then changing the discourse on victim jurisprudence. Now this basically talks about the judicial system and the justice system dealing with victims, and at two stages. Number one, pre-crime, and number two, post-crime. Now in pre-crime, there should be a concept of victimization and there should be concepts of crime prevention against the victim, and in post-crime about mitigation and rehabilitation, victims should have some rights, right? So this is what it is saying. So in pre-crime, it says that you should have some mapping, vulnerability mapping, then you should go for capacity building. And in post-crime mitigation and rehabilitation, it is talking about 7 points for victims. So that is what it is saying. First, it begins by telling us that they are treated as mere victims. They have no active role in the whole judicial system once the crime has happened. So any reform in any criminal justice system should take these concerns on board, and we've been discussing, I've told you earlier as well, that there is going to be reform in CRPC, right? So that is what it is telling, that overwhelming need to reconceptualize the institutions of our criminal justice system. Now pre-crime conceptualization of victimization means that we should have crime prevention from victims' perspective, right? There should be risk mapping and vulnerability mapping, and we should be able to identify potential victims. This is what it is saying. You can read it in the PDF. Then in post-crime scenario, right, it talks about that we should shed the image of victim as mere witnesses and institutionally recognize their rights and requirements. So basically now he's talking about 7 rights and requirements. Number 1 being access. So their access should be guaranteed under Article 14 and 21 and not as a DPSP. Then non-registration of FIR. So these are the things that he's addressing. You can read them. Nothing for me to explain. The need for effective victim participation. So the role of victim should be throughout the cycle from complaint to trial to punishment. At every stage, victim should be involved in the process. That is what it is telling. Then legal aid to victim under RTI. So victim should be having access to RTI. Then victim must be entitled to information about their role in criminal justice process, what they can expect, what is the status of trial, and other rights and entitlements as victim of crime. So these are the things they should be getting under RTI. Then he also says that RTI can help in securing the right to protection of the victims. So they'll get to know if the accused is getting bail or if he's being released, then the victim can be informed. As a matter of fact, under section 15A of Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act, there is a provision like that. It should be extended to other laws as well. This is what this is saying. Then the 5th point is that under the 1985 UN Declaration of Basic Principles of Justice for Victims of Crime and Abuse of Power. So under this, victims of rape and acid attack get certain provisions and facilities. So they are saying now it should be extended to each and every victim of every crime in general, right? State must play the role of a facilitator and provide assistance to victims in terms of medical, psychological and financial material help, right? Then also it calls for capacity building. Then there should also be right to compensation, because it is very, very important, right? But for this, political will has been lacking for so long. And there is actually a victim compensation scheme under section 357A of the CRPC. It must be revitalized and revised in terms of accessibility and adequacy. And then finally talks about restitution must be separated from compensation. See, restitution is given by the offender and compensation is given by the state. So there should be clear demarcation. Unfortunately, in our criminal justice system, both of them are interchangeably used and there is a lot of confusion. So this author is saying that there should be clarity about these two so that victims could be compensated and there could also be rights of restitution for the victims. So this is what this editorial is saying. You can read this. Then page 7, this one. So this is basically talking about how countries have been talking about decoupling from China, their economies, but that is not really happening. In fact, the latest signing of RCEP goes on to show that countries are not really ready to decouple from China. And this has led to a phenomena known as China plus one. So we'll get to know what is China plus one. And he's making some very, very good points. So let us dig into it. So first of all, there have been discussions about post-pandemic global economy that countries would be going away from China and its appeal as a manufacturing hub would be diminishing. But reality is different. Some labor-intensive industries such as textiles, they are shifting or moving away from China, not because of any other reason, but because labor costs are increasing. But in other industries, the trends show that businesses have mostly remained in China. Now, what is China plus one? So this Yossi Sheffi, he's a professor at MIT. He has come up with the concept that the combination of trade war and COVID plus one crisis has resulted in firms establishing relatively small scale operations elsewhere. So this is known as China plus one. That means their main operations are still concentrated in China, but they are opening small scale operation elsewhere so that probably in future they could be shifting out of China. Now, he says that there are 3 reasons for firms to remain in China and pursue this strategy. So the first point is starting and maintaining operations are much easier in China, which is true. Then Chinese firms are nimble and fast. That means that after these restrictions were lifted in China, the factories in China started or resumed production activity very fast. And then it is saying that companies have invested years and decades into investing and creating an entire ecosystem in China. So now shifting out of China would cost a lot in terms of time and expenditure. So that is why companies are not really shifting out of China. So this strategy of global firms has resulted in intensification of competition among Asian economies to be that plus one. So not the main production hub, but plus one, right? So now he's talking about a host of challenges that the RCEP and China plus one strategy is likely to have impact on investment inflows into different economies. Now, India per se faces 3 challenges in this race. Number 1, increasing domestic public investments, which is very important and we have been lagging. According to IMF, if we increase public investment by 1% of GDP, the GDP could get boosted by 2.7%, private investment by 10%, employment by 1.2%. Now, these are very important figures, so you should know them if these investments are of high quality, right? So please make it a point that you have them in your notes, right? Then the second one is India needs a major overhaul in its trade policy, which has been lacking. And number 3 is increasing women's participation in the labor force. Now, in terms of overhaul of the trade policy, we must take into cognizance the possibility of 2 effects of RCEP. Number 1, Walmart effect, and number 2, switching effect. Now, what happens in Walmart? Walmart basically sources materials from different sources and it provides the cheapest options. So there is a variety, but options are cheap. So this will lead to sustained demand for basic products, but it may also lead to reduced wages and more competition due to sourcing from multiple vendors. So this is Walmart effect. And switching effect means that these developed economies would be scouting for new sources to fulfill import demands, which require firms to be nimble and competitive. Again, a lot of competition amongst the Asian economies. And our trade policy has to recognize the pitfalls of the 2-track mode, that is firms which would be operating under the FTA and other for the rest. So for example, we are not having FTA, but some other would be having FTA. So they would be producing more at a higher rate and also at lower duty. So how to deal with that? So that should also be in our trade policy. So a major fallout of this policy dualism is dampening of export diversification. If you remember, we discussed some time back about Thailand and Vietnam, how their export basket is just limited to 5 major items, right? But India is having high export diversification because we are not bound by this policy dualism, right? The challenge is to make exporting activity more attractive for all firms in the economy, whether they are conducting business with free trade areas or not. It should be attractive for them to set shop in India. Then to increase women's participation in the labor force. Now in yesterday's video, we've discussed this in detail. So nothing new here. This is again a reiteration of what all facts we discussed in yesterday's editorial. So the conclusion of this women's part is that India could gain hugely if barriers to women's participation in workforce are removed. And manufacturing sector should create labor-intensive jobs that rural and semi-urban women are qualified for. Then he finally talks about we need a new approach, that in this change scenario, we need a well-calibrated approach. See, we changed our labor laws to compete with that. We did that on September 23rd. Indonesian parliament also passed legislation and it slashed more than 70 separate existing laws. So in our country, people are just criticizing these laws without any view of what is happening internationally. Now we are competing with different economies, so we have to make our labor laws more fluid. So we are competing, so we have to pay attention. Even Bangladesh is negotiating with dozens of countries, including US and Canada. So this is our competition. So we have to make reform. So this is what this is saying. Good editorial. Now this one on page 7. So this is about the power of pardon under Article 72 and 161. 72, the President of India can grant pardon, and 161, the governors of state, right? So it is referring to some cases and how they are supposed to exercise their powers. For example, in this case, the court made it clear that it is the central and state governments which would be telling the president and governor how to exercise their powers, and it is not their discretionary power. Then again, it says that governor cannot decide the merits of such advice tendered by the state government to exercise their powers under 161. Then Shatrughan Chauhan versus Union of India. Then this is talking about the inordinate delay of taking decision on mercy petitions, right? And it also said that the due process of law guaranteed under Article 21 is available to each and every prisoner till his last breath, right? And then it gave mercy to 15 convicts under Article 32. We'll be discussing about Article 32 as well in today's video. Then he says, for long, governors considered themselves unanswerable for their actions, but Apex Court has clarified that the constitutional functionaries are not exempt from judicial scrutiny. So he's talking about this 2020 case where the speaker, he was basically not deciding on the anti-defection proceedings under Schedule 10. Then the Supreme Court gave him a sort of a scolding and gave him 4 weeks to decide on that. So basically what it is telling us that nobody is untouchable. Supreme Court can intervene and give instructions to everyone. So this is what it is telling. You can read about this in the PDF. Nothing for me to explain here now. Then this one. So this is basically a survey which was conducted by Azim Premji University, titled Myths of Online Education. Again, very, very important. Not just for this year, for coming 2-3 years, because you can quote examples. And this was conducted for government school students. More than 80,000 government school students were covered under this, both students and teachers, right? So it was done in 5 states, in 26 districts, this many schools, 80,000 students, experience of children and teachers with online education. So some results: more than 60% of these students could not access education, online education. Why? Because non-availability or inadequate number of smartphones and difficulty in using apps. Then children with disabilities, they found it more difficult to participate. 90% of teachers who were dealing with such children also found it difficult and found that students were unable to access. Then almost 90% of parents did not think that online education was good, and they were ready to send back their children to the school provided health facilities are taken care of. Almost 70% of parents were of the opinion that online classes were not effective. Teachers too expressed frustration with the online classes. More than 80% said they were unable to maintain emotional connect, which is very, very important. And 90% felt that no meaningful assessment could happen. Nearly 50% said that children were unable to complete the assignments which were given during the online model. So this is about the online education. Now this can be used as an example for pandemic online education and also as a future guideline for online education in India. Then page 9, this one basically PM Modi's statements about terror at the BRIC summit. BRIC also came out with some anti-terror framework, and I've provided that in the PDF. You can read about it. Nothing for me to explain here, right? Then vaccine not end all, says expert Niti Aayog member VK Paul, who's also heading our vaccine coordination system, right? So he says that vaccine is just an addition. We need to follow all this social distancing, masks and everything, right? And then this one, lack of consent won't vitiate CBI probe. So Supreme Court has said that if a court has taken cognizance of a corruption case against any government official which is being investigated by the CBI, then the accused cannot go to the court saying that the CBI did not take permission from state government under section 6 of DPSC. This is what it is saying. And the court also made an observation that the CBI cannot extend its power to any state unless the state government gives its consent. And the court said that this arrangement is in tune with federal character of our constitution. So this is about it. Then this one, again, no new figures, because in yesterday's editorial, we've discussed all the figures about women's participation in the workforce. So NHRC has also taken a note of that, and it will be soon coming out with guidelines for the government to improve women's participation in the workforce. Now, what could be the possible solutions? Number one, investment in care economy as well as regulatory mechanism, because if you remember, even in yesterday's video, we discussed how women are more concentrated in the care economy. Then the state must also come forward with private payers that can participate. For example, in Nepal, there is a community care system. Then need for better working conditions, gender sensitivity at workplaces, and equal sharing of household burden. So these are all the possible solutions. You can use these solutions anywhere in your answer writing. An urban employment guarantee scheme along the lines of Manrega with reservation for women, and skilling and encouraging women to take up unconventional jobs like that of drivers and electricians, and making workplaces safe. A lot more needs to be done in that area. So these are the possible solutions of increasing the participation of women in the workforce. Then this one, so this is an interview with Mr. Shyam Saran. He's usually very good at writing. So here he is giving his own opinion whether India should have joined RCEP. According to him, India should have, because it is a disadvantage. Then again, opinions and opinions. We'll get to know about it later, because if you remember, even in yesterday's video, we discussed how when India did not join BRI, so many ex-officers and political parties and editorials and journalists, they all blamed government of India for short-sightedness of not joining the BRI, and now everybody is praising India for not joining the BRI. So let's not get into it. Then page 13, just the headline. Again, we do not know what Biden will do once he enters office. So all of these are speculations, even though he has said it, but let him take his office and let us see what sort of policies he is going to follow. Then this one. So 3 videos back, I guess, we discussed about this Port City project. This is all about it. You can read it. 1.4 billion. Then Sri Lanka would be giving tax shops for different industries, specifically the ones concerned with financial sector, to set up shop here. So this is again a reclamation project. This is the Colombo port, and this is where this port city is coming up. $1.4 billion project. Yesterday, Sri Lanka came out with its budget. So in it, there was a big talk about this one. So it is a mega real estate Chinese development project offering tax concessions to attract investors to revive the struggling economy. 1.4 billion land reclamation project, single largest FDI in Sri Lanka so far, will offer tax concessions to attract trade, banking and foreign exchange transactions. So this is all about it. Then page 14, cities need to reset as pandemic exposed frailties. Again, just the statements by PM, nothing substantial for us to take from here, but you should read this. Then the Express, Lakshmi Vilas Bank placed under 30-day moratorium by RBI, caps withdrawal. So this bank has not been doing well. So RBI has now come up with a string of obligations and limitations upon the bank. So this is all that is telling that withdrawal limits have been capped to 25,000 from savings and 50,000 per month from the current account. So this will be a 30-day moratorium period. And then RBI would also be going for amalgamation of this bank with DSB Bank India, which is a subsidiary of DBS of Singapore. Then PM had a talk with Biden. Then we've discussed this one. Then again, Mr. Shyam Saran is not happy with India's decision of not joining RCEP. Then China signs off on BRICS counter-terror strategy. So I have put this in the PDF. So they will be taking appropriate measures to prevent the use of their territories for terror bases or organization of terrorist acts. So these are generic statements. You can read them. Nothing for me to explain. Then second trial of QR-SAM proves DRDO warheads capabilities. So basically what is QR-SAM? Quick Reaction Surface to Air Missile, which has been indigenously developed by the DRDO. DRDO conducted the second consecutive trial. This has a range of 25 to 30 kilometers and is primarily designed and developed by DRDO to provide a protective shield to the armored columns of the army from enemy air strikes. So this is all that is. Then again, government pinned its hope on in-country vaccine trial. So yesterday he made some statements, Mr. VK Paul. So first, India is in talks with these global firms, including Moderna and Pfizer, about getting the commercial use of these vaccines. Then even if these are granted, doses will be delivered to countries that have already signed deals. So the developed countries would be getting it first. If you remember, I've already told you about vaccine nationalism. And third, the 5 vaccine candidates being tested in India at present will be able to fulfill the large domestic requirements. Now, what is the problem, especially with the Pfizer vaccine? That it needs to be sold at -70 degree Celsius, and it calls for a huge cold storage infrastructure which is lacking in India. On that count, the Moderna one still does better and it has a longer shelf life of around 30 days. We discussed this yesterday, right? Then explained Article 32 and Supreme Court. So basically this is related to your paper 2 polity, Article 32. So Article 32 is the bulwark of fundamental rights, right to constitutional remedies. Under this you can go for writs. There are 5 types of writ. Habeas corpus, which means that any person who is illegally detained should be presented in the court. It means to present the body of. Mandamus, which directs public officials, governments, courts to perform their statutory duty. Quo warranto, to show by what warrant a person is holding public office. Prohibition, directing judicial or quasi-judicial authorities to stop proceeding which it has no jurisdiction over. And certiorari, re-examination of an order given by judicial, quasi-judicial or administrative authority. So these are the 5 writs covered under Article 32. This is present in Part 3 of the Constitution. Dr. Ambedkar called it the heart and soul of our Constitution during the debates of the Constituent Assembly, and at that time it was known as Article 25, tentative Article 25, and finally it came out as Article 32 in Part 3. Now this article cannot be suspended except during the period of national emergency, that too on the count of war and external aggression, right? Then who can issue these writs? Both the Supreme Court under Article 32 and the High Courts under Article 226. But the writs under Article 226 are not under fundamental rights, and the scope of these writs under Article 226 are wider than the scope of writs under Article 32. Basically these 5 writs only, but under Article 226 the subjects can be dealt are much wider than the ones that can be dealt under Article 32, right? Then how to proceed in normal civil or criminal cases? What happens? You first go to the lower courts or the trial courts, then High Court, then Supreme Court. But in case of your fundamental rights being trampled, you can directly approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 or High Court under Article 226. Now, why is this in news? Some journalists have been arrested. Supreme Court heard the plea of some and told others to approach the High Court. So this is what it is about. We don't have to get into that. Now, what has been the observations of the court over this article? In Romesh Thapar versus State of Madras, Supreme Court observed that Article 32 provides a guaranteed remedy for the enforcement of fundamental rights. So this is the first case. You should know about some cases when you're talking about the fundamental rights. Then second is the ADM Jabalpur versus SS Shukla. So in that, Supreme Court said that during an emergency, these articles or these right under Article 32, those 5 writs can be suspended. Now, constitutional experts say that it is eventually at the discretion of Supreme Court and each individual judge to decide whether an intervention is warranted in this case, which could also be heard by the High Court first. So it is again a discretion of the court which case to hear and which not. So this is all about Article 32, and this ADM Jabalpur case, you'll also be referring to this case when you'll study about ordinances, right? Article 123 ordinance, there again this has some relevance, right? Then Facebook, Twitter CEOs face questions from Senate panel on election measures. So they were basically censuring President Trump and his supporters. So now Republican senators are calling them. Then about Ethiopia, we have discussed yesterday. Then Solomon Islands said to ban Facebook over criticism of government. So if this happens, Solomon Islands would join a handful of countries which have banned Facebook, including China, Iran and North Korea. Now, government has been heavily criticized on this platform over 2 things. Number 1, the distribution of economic stimulus fund and the change in foreign policy to switch diplomatic ties from Taiwan to China. So these are the counts on which it was being heavily criticized on Facebook. Now, Facebook is hugely popular forum for discussion in Solomons. The government uses Facebook to broadcast speeches by Prime Minister and also disseminate health information. Then this SpaceX we discussed yesterday, right? Mr. Glover, the first African American to move in for a long haul at the International Space Station. Then Geo seeks periodic auction, SpaceX pushes satellite use. So they made their deposition before the TRAI and they said that Geo is asking for a regular schedule of periodic spectrum auctions, right? And SpaceX wants to enter Indian market and it wants to use satellites to promote broadband in India. So this is all about it. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos, and please give us a thumbs up if you liked our videos. Also, Connect with us on our Instagram page, UPSC for Everyone. And please connect with us on our Telegram page where you can access the PDFs of the videos that I'll be posting daily, right? So see you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.